The views, comments, and opinions of the following program do not necessarily reflect those of Morris Media Studios, MorrisMediaLive.com, or its affiliates. Listener discretion is advised.
I'm a young black man doing all that I can to stand. Oh, but when I look around and I see what's being done to my kind every day, I'm being hunted as prey. My people don't want no trouble. We've had enough, sure go. I just wanna live. God protect me. I just wanna live. I just wanna live.
I was just a black boy brought up in the white world. I just wanna ask God if I'm in the right world. Is my life a test or is my life a curse? They put us in an ambulance, got us in a hearse, cause another brother deceased, but it doesn't matter. Killed by the police while we in the handcuffs. I don't wanna take a knee, I just wanna stand up. Where's the new Huey P? Call it Black Panthers. Just do the math, they subtract us like minus. Fuck COVID, KKK is the virus. We are not afraid, we will not stay quiet. They will always label a rebellion or riot. Kill a black man seems to be their assignment. White supremacists terrorize the environment. Guns and the canine, tasers and sirens. I just wanna live, I don't wanna live violent. We don't want violence.
My people don't want no trouble. We've had enough, sure go. I just wanna live. God protect me. I just wanna live. I just wanna live. I just wanna live. God protect me. I just wanna live. I just wanna live.
Beloved, greetings to you from Los Angeles. Welcome to Faith Without Borders. I'm your host, Pastor Kelvin Sauls. It is indeed a joy for me to welcome you to our show today as we continue to navigate all of the challenges we are facing right now, whether it is the virus called COVID-19, as well as the virus called individual bigotry and institutional racism in the United States, especially as it's connected to what's happening in law enforcement and the ongoing murderous consequences, of police culture, in the United States. So that is certainly a virus that black folk have experienced in the United States since 1619. So I think we need to be clear about that what's happening in Minneapolis right now, we ought not to look at that as a historical, but really as a connection of events that's been taking place as police culture can be traced back, to the institution of slave catchers, in the United States. And so we're going to be getting into all of that today here on Faith Without Borders. I'll be sharing some perspective and some commentary about that. But we also will have a very, very powerful conversation with a friend of mine, Klay Williams, and I'll say something about him, in a few minutes. But let me just once again remind us that here at Faith Without Borders, our mission is to engage in the education and mobilization of multiracial and multireligious transnational movements for social equity and planetary justice globally. Basically, we talk about everything, anything here on Faith Without Borders, and we seek to ground it in faith perspectives from a very, very, pluralistic, and inclusive way as we seek to utilize faith for inspiration and liberation and not for discrimination and oppression. And so we're repurposing faith in that particular way. And so that's what we're about at Faith Without Borders. And so we're looking forward to our conversation, about that today. It's just a joy for me to welcome my brother from another mother, dear friend of mine, Klay Williams, with us today as our guest. He is, if you don't know, the author of Plan A, and he has done so much with this project, has touched so many lives, and it's all about getting, you to the door of your true purpose. And so we're going to talk about the book. We're going to talk about the work that he's doing with individuals, steering them towards living lives that are on purpose, and not just floundering out there, jumping on everybody and anybody's agenda, but really getting to know and understand your divine purpose and how then that purpose can inform, what you are doing. So, he is, about holistic wellness. He is a lifestyle expert. And I've known about this lifestyle thing since I've met him because I got a lot of tips from him, especially by how he dressed and just how he carried himself. And so I'm going to see if we have Klay with us. He's coming to us from none other than New York City, New York. All right, Klay, how you doing, my brother?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Pastor Sauls?
Hey, man, look at you, man. You got a mic set up, man. Look at that, man. Look at you, man. Are you?
You do know I have a podcast.
Oh, okay. You in your own home studio or something like that. Man, look at you. See, that's what I'm talking about. Lifestyle expert. Now, look, I'm gonna get some tips from you today, and I'm gonna see if I can get me a mic like that somewhere. Where I can just pop it up and just do my thing, man. You know what I'm saying?
Well, we have to be men of excellence, so it's what we do.
Listen, man, it's so good to see you. I know I surprised you by popping into your live Instagram show and conversation there. I do follow you, and so of course, when those that you follow go live, you get a invite. And I don't know where I was, and I got this invite. I said, "Oh, wow. I have some time. Let me just pop into this conversation and see what Klay is up to and all of that." And man, I was blessed and just totally inspired. And you saw, I was firing off comments, just affirming what you were saying, around, especially that conversation. I think was all about relationships, around that. But let's start off. We do want to talk about the book. We want to talk about the project. But let's start off with, how are you doing? How's the family doing? I know New York has been, in our hearts and minds, as has been so many other places around the world. Certainly South Africa for me, because of how COVID-19 has impacted, our family and friends there, and countrymen and women. But how are you? How are things, in New York? How's the family? Just kind of let us know how you be, brother.
Yeah, I'm doing really well during this time. Of course, just super weary from all the things that are happening in the world as it relates to systemic racism, to COVID-19, the deaths and things like that. But it's really interesting to be positioned as someone who is a wellness coach to be prepared to help support people through this process. My family, they're doing really well. I was really concerned about my sister because she has lupus, and people who have any type of immune diseases, they're the ones who are most vulnerable. So she's doing really well out in Texas, and my mom's well, dad. And so everyone seems to be doing great for, the interim time. And New York City, I mean, I've never seen anything like this before in my life. We are a city that just keeps on, going. And so literally we're dragging our groceries with our mask and our gloves and, trying to help people as safely as we possibly can. But the spirit here is definitely very, very strong, and the will of people and their charitable acts just to come together is, really a sight to see.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, COVID-19 is so devastating, and it has, of course, brought out, some of the worst consequences. I mean, we just reached 100,000 deaths in the United States. But at the same time, it has really brought out the best, in people, in terms of just the generosity, the courtesy, the sense of mutuality, around it. So you're right. When we experience the worst, for some reason, it's also opportunity for us to bring out the best, of who we are. So we're watching, New York. Certainly, that's where we met, and and I have some great and fond memories, man, of our time together there. And really appreciate, how we were able to do the work that we were called to do, at that Global Ministries Agency, of the United Methodist Church. So that was great, man. And then you went off, man, and you kicked me to the curb. You just, became this global, wellness person. I mean, I'm trying to get well, so you just left me, in the dust, brother. So, so tell us about the project, Plan A. I know it's about purpose. The two of us are big on purpose. I just did a 3-part piece with one of the organizations I work with here in Los Angeles called In the Meantime. Around Leap Living, which is really about living every day. Actualizing your purpose. That's what LEAP stands for, for me. And so the two of us share passion around that. So tell us about, Plan A. What is it about? And then we'll dig deep into some of the tools that you reveal, not just, through the writing, but also the work that you are doing.
It's so interesting, Kelvin. So when I was meeting you, I was doing Plan A. When I met you, I was doing Plan A and working for the Global Base Mission Agency at the same time. And so for me, GBGM was just a pit stop. I had started this work years ago. I moved to New York City in 2007 with just $500, a vision and a dream. And I knew that I wanted to support people in living out their purpose and their calling, as well as nurturing their interior and styling their exterior. So that's where, my sense of style had come from. And I knew that I had to give up one of the missions in order to be successful. A jack of all trades is a jack of none. And so I stopped doing the actual fashion consultations and just focused primarily on the purpose building and really helping people not only discover what their purpose and calling was or is, but giving them the tools to actually sustain themselves while they're trying to get to what I call their Plan A, to look at their past residue, looking at who you need to forgive, how to close the gap between your past and your present, how to be present for yourself, how to let go of the imposter syndrome. So any of those interpersonal and interpersonal things that we seem to lack in order to not only discover our vision, but to sustain ourselves through the vision, there was this idea of Plan A. And so literally it came to me after Princeton Seminary. I was working full-time at Polo Ralph Lauren while I was at Princeton. And I did not really feel connected to a lot of the seminarians or to the seminary as it was. And so I had to pay for my own schooling. And so the cost of Ralph Lauren was just to offset my education. I did not know that I was going into a space that would help me crystallize and discover, all that I was meant to do and be. I kept my life separate, so people didn't know that I was obtaining a Master of Divinity across the street. And when people come in, I'm styling them, and shortly after, maybe the first couple of months, people kept saying, I feel connected to you. And so people stopped coming in to just shop. They wanted to talk to me about their life issues. And so I was going to like bar mitzvahs. I was helping brides and grooms, get down the aisle, last minute jitters. And, so it just dawned on me, there's a way that I can, again, nurture the interior while styling, the exterior. And so Plan A was born from that vantage point. And so when I left Global Ministries, where you and I were in a partnership for a lot of projects, I knew it was time for me to go back out. I went back in to get some of the financial resourcing that I needed, and I stepped back out on faith to finish the work that I knew I was called to do.
Yeah. You mentioned an interior-exterior piece. We certainly live in a culture with so much focus on the exterior. While that has its place, because of, a grooming and style and cleanliness and all of that, the interior, of course, play a very, very important role as well in terms of how do we, care for our internal landscape, which in so many ways connects then with purpose and with vision, as you say. Talk a little bit about how do we kind of, on the one hand, distinguish between the two, yet on the other hand, also realize that they are connected and can have a catalytic, relationship with one another as we seek to become, what God has intended for us to be.
Yeah, a mentor of mine shared a story with me a long time ago. There was a young gentleman who was working in Hollywood who had became the actor that he really wanted to become. And he focused, again, all in the exterior. And so as he became more purposeful in being an actor and sharing his creative art, he started to notice that the more success that he was able to get, the lower he felt inside. And so what tended to happen is when the higher we go in our life, the things that we have not dealt with in our past, whether that is lack of self-love, lack of self-worth, and figuring out the source of that, it gets amplified the more our, exterior light gets exposed. So the higher you go, a lot of times these inward things start to just become bigger than life. And so you look a lot of times and you see people who are very, very successful. They have the suit, they have, the nice physique and all those things that, matter in terms of getting external success. But when they get to the top, when they get to a space, they're not able to sustain themselves or handle the success. And so the idea is to go ahead and allow the part that is your exterior grooming, how you really want to care for yourself and present your calling card to the world to mirror and match who you are from the inside. And so that way you're reflecting your value inwardly and allowing it to flow outwardly. And when you are in that space, as Dr. Gary Zukav says in Sea of the Soul, when your personality comes to meet the energy of your soul, that's authentic power. And so think about that. When you are in a space that you are clear on who you are internally, you have done the work of being very strong in who you are, you believe in who you are, and you've done, again, closing the gap between your past and your present. Anything that's extra, that's an external, look or external brand, is amplified. You are then a whole, complete person that no one can touch. And my experience has just been that with myself and with my clients. Yeah, certainly, that whole piece about identity clearly is key. So can you, and identity, is not just important when you're going through your teenage years, right? Going through identity crisis, but identity and the transition in identity, is something that is with us throughout our entire lives, right? So what role does identity play? Getting to understand who you are. What role does identity play, in the pursuit of one's, purpose and vision? it keeps you in alignment with your goals, and it allows you to be less distracted. I can't tell you how many times, like, I've had this clear set vision on what it is that I wanted to do, and me not being clear on who I was as a person, I allowed a lot of distractions to detour me and, make me kind of go to a lesser plan A, which was a plan B, a C, and a D, because I was not clear on who the identity of me as a person was. Through my whole entire experience, and I say journey at this point, during seminary was a very difficult time for me because my identity was not intact. Mm-hmm. I was definitely wrestling with my sexuality in a way in which I had not had to confront it before. Mm-hmm. And the thing about seminary that I always tell people is it literally is a wilderness experience. Everything that you ever thought to be true is sort of, tested. Everything that you have come to believe yourself to be, it is sort of in a gauntlet, period, if you will. And I was finding myself being pulled in so many different directions because I wasn't clear on my identity as not only a Black gay male, but just a person in general. And so when you find yourself in a space where you are not clear on how you identify, your personal being, how you have a pure sort of understanding of your identity, you end up in so many different, directions. You're headed north where you really want to go, and not having a clear identity puts you in the south, you're mm-hmm. east, west. You're all over the place, and you're not able to sustain yourself unless that work is done.
Yeah, absolutely. So around this, plan A, piece, you talk about, living out one's purpose, and one's call. The other piece you mentioned was this whole thing about a job. I mean, that's kind of, what is put before us in so many ways. You go to school, then you got to get a job, and then you got to, begin to climb that, that corporate ladder around that. So it's almost like, we've allowed having a job to be a destination. But I think what I'm hearing you say is having a job is really part of your journey. Right, so you'll have these pit stops, you'll have these rest areas, around that. That one's destination really is getting to know and understand one's purpose, and then through that, let that purpose then fuel your passion, and then looking then for ways to see, how you can support that passion, and that vision as you continue, to become. What God has called you to be. Am I making am I on track here in terms of kind of understanding what you're trying to say?
Yeah, absolutely. And for a lot of people that there's a clear distinction I want to make is sometimes your purpose work is your job, and sometimes your purpose work is not your money maker. Mm-hmm. Purpose is literally, as I define it, like the becoming process, becoming the very best version of yourself so that you can utilize your unique gifts and talents to better the human condition, however that is for you. And for me, it has become a sense of career in tandem with purpose. But for some people, it's not going to be that, and that's okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I want to encourage you to say more about that. Because we have so many folk that get into career crisis, so many folk that get into call crisis. I can certainly identify with that. And a recent book that just came out entitled Called Out, you see, that one of the, the View and the Good Morning America anchors, and her name will come to me. She just, put out that book. She was talking about the career crisis that she was in. And basically juxtaposing her rise, in the corporation with her decline internally. So there was a disconnect, between that internal, external, piece. And with especially now what's going on with COVID-19, the unemployment, rate is up. So people really are being challenged to really look at who they are, right, and really look at what this will mean for them in the midst of such a disruptor such as COVID-19. How can one, still stay on track, with discovering, developing, and deploying one's purpose?
Yeah, so here's the process that I say is in my book, There's Only Plan A. And I think you're talking about Paula Ferris.
Yes, Paula Ferris.
Yeah. And what she talks about in my work, there's definitely is a commonality with this crisis. And a lot of times because we're not paying attention, we always think that purpose is something that we need to discover as if it's a magical osmosis thing. And purpose is never dead. Purpose is always speaking to us. And so what I tell people to do, especially if they're in a moment right now of uncertainty and they're trying to figure out what are those next steps to be clear on what that vision is, go back and look at the last 3 big decisions you've ever made in your life. The moments where you felt most alive, you were utilizing your gifts, your talents in a unique way that actually lit you up, where you felt that you were not only contributing to the very best of who you are, but also embettering the human condition in some kind of way. What were you doing in that particular point in time? What did it feel like? What was your surroundings that happened? What made you so excited that you wanted to keep going? And then ask yourself after that, what happened? Because the thing about purpose is it's always speaking to us constantly. And usually one point or another, as was Paula's case, there was a point where she literally forgot to tune in to what were the things that lit her up and brought her alive because something happened. And usually when that something happens, it's outside of us and we tend to go on a different path than where we were in alignment with to begin with in the first place.
Yeah, and I can certainly, identify with that in terms of what I call, the call crisis that I've experienced and had to grow through, in terms of that. Thanks for that. But, we don't want to get people confused by going and getting Paula's book, right? We want to make sure folk get to know and understand about your book. So let's pause there for a little bit. Tell us about the book, the name of the book and how folk can access it, and then we'll continue around that.
Sure. So the book is available wherever you buy books, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and wherever, again, you can download it on Kindle as well. And so the premise of the book is in a formula. And the formula that I came up with around Plan A is not only what I have gone through, but what I have watched other people who have been clients go through within this 14, 15-year spectrum. And so it starts by asking a very clear question when we're trying to figure out what our purpose is. And the first part of that is part 1, God. Asking literally, how can I utilize my gifts, my talents, and my expertise and my gifting to better the human condition? How can I do that? Whenever we need help for anything even tangible in terms of like getting a sheet of paper printed or at a grocery store, you can't find this or that, we ask. And so we ask for all these other tangible things, but we don't ask God, the universe, intuition, mind, whatever that is for you, how you can utilize your gifts and talents to better the human condition. Next, it's imperative that we then have a vision to support whatever it was that we received by asking and being clear about that. The vision's imperative because the vision is literally your calling card. It's your GPS. It is the mark that is going to keep you on task whenever there are distractions, as I was saying earlier, that comes in your way. If it's not in alignment with that vision, you have a clear no and you have a very clear yes. So we have God. God then gives us a vision. And then after vision is the belief that comes behind that. And to your point, Pastor Sauls earlier about people having that lack of identity, it comes up in the form of having a lack of belief. And so there is the belief that we need to have in our plan A. And then there's the belief that we need to have within ourselves. It has to become one in the affirmative, because what that then does, it supports the vision as we are moving out in the world to fulfill our calling. All right, so we have God, we have vision, we have belief, and then the biggest part of this whole entire equation is doing the hard work. Earlier, I was talking about closing the gap between your past and your present. This is that internal work of asking yourself, who is it that I need to forgive? Do I feel like I'm an imposter? Where does patience come into the fray? What are areas in my life where I have shortchanged myself? What are areas in my life where I have not, been honest with other people about how I feel about their treatment of me? Mm-hmm. And so it's literally digging deep. Any of those imposter things that we have where we're walking in a room and we don't feel whole enough, or we're wondering why, we have that thing that I call kingship. We look at other people as kings and queens, and no, you're a king, you're a queen. You deserve to be in the room that you're in. And so it's going and literally doing all of that interior work of isms that are holding you back from believing in yourself, from now then having the vision and then God. So we have God, we have vision, we have belief, doing that hard work in on yourself, which is a lifetime journey, and then surrender. And that has been my biggest growth edge throughout this whole entire process, is after you have done literally all you can possibly do, you have to then surrender and give up the vision to the power that gave you the idea in the first place, and realizing that God's dream for us, as long as we're on path and we're doing what we can, we know that we can trust that He is working it out for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. The thing that I really appreciate about all of this, Klay, is the centrality of faith, and not religion, not denomination, right? But just the centrality of our connection, with the divine, with our Creator, or whatever you call God, and just to understand ourselves as vessels and vehicles, if you will, of that divine purpose that works in us, and through us around that. So that's, I think, what's very, very powerful in terms of how you talk about this and how you invite your clients into that. Today I put on Facebook this whole piece about the connection between divinity and humanity. And how that in so many ways informs then our identity, our ability, and then determines our destiny, around that. And when we understand ourselves as receptacles, holders, if you will, of the divine, right? Then, we will not settle for less than the best, right? We will always seek to strive for excellence, because we were beautifully and powerfully created by God, you see, even while we were in our mother's wombs. And this is what's so, I think, powerful around what you are talking about. And I appreciate the fact that you connect, one's purpose with the greater good. And which leads me to my next question in terms of how do one find synergy, balance, if you will, between making, a difference, making money, and making meaning, as part of, seeking that sense of alignment, making money, making meaning, and making a difference, as part of what you're working with folk on.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So in the world that we live in, what has been really a key point for me is being able to sort of figure out what is that sliver that exists in the world that has not been done the way that only I can do, or the way that only you can do. And when you are clear on what that is, well, first let me actually back up. I always start with this, especially if I'm trying to figure out how I can sort of transport the meaning of my work into dollars. Mm-hmm. What is the question that I can answer? Through my work, there is definitely a question that people are having. And so for me, it's how do I discover my purpose and calling in life? How do I get to the next level of my purpose career and things like that? And if I then say to myself, that is the question that people are asking, how can I uniquely be the answer for that? Why am I the answer for that? Utilizing my gifts and my talents in a way that only I can do. And so when you understand that you are the answer to someone's question, you figure out how you can do it in a way that's innovative, that makes sense to the actual demographic that you are seeking to service. It's one of those magical things that it's almost just like the piece of the puzzle just gets put, and the last piece gets inserted, and the whole masterpiece is done. Once you can figure that out for yourself, done.
Wow. Yeah, I think that's a key piece. And the other publication, Klay, that you had out, and I think that's what you dealt with on that Instagram, episode that I jumped in on, was the meditations piece that you were doing, because I think you were asking people to kind of lift up some of those, meditations, and then you would speak to them around that. That, of course, meditation being a very, very important, critical, if you will, tool or practice or discipline towards, alignment. That plays such a huge role. And in so many ways, there are some folk in our culture that kind of, try to put meditation down. I don't know why they're doing it, because it's been an integral part of our culture. If you look at how Harriet Tubman and all of our liberation leaders have done the work that they've done, they spend some time in meditation, connecting with the divine and getting the divine purpose and doing, what they needed to do. And meditation, of course, connects then with how one nurtures one's spirituality, around that. So that begs the question: what role then does one's spirituality, play, in trying to intersect, purpose, vision, and also how can that then, contribute to the greater good?
Can you repeat that last part one more time?
So how does one's spirituality, help to provide an intersection, if you will, between purpose, vision, and to do all of that in service of the greater good?
It's the glue, and it is literally the sustaining measures of the journey. Because when I was homeless and just couch surfing for the longest period of time, in my journey, I finally landed on a really great friend's house, and then ended up going back, couch surfing in different points and periods of my life during that point. There was a sense of loneliness in the journey. And not a sense of loneliness in feeling that I didn't have friends and things like that. But when you are living on purpose and you're trying to do something that's bigger than yourself, how can I say this? There are moments where you're looking and you're saying, can I really do this? And there are all these different outside factors that, come in. And again, for me, it was, some financial things, how I'm going to get backing. It was, how am I going to get more support? How I'm going to do this and that. What spirituality then does, especially when you are, focused in on being open and a vessel to commune with God or whatever higher power you choose to say, you know that you're not alone. And during those times that you can't see a way, that God has a way for you. And so even when COVID-19 started, so many people have said, are you lonely? Are you afraid? And, are you scared? Throughout my period of time, I have never had a sense of fear or a sense of feeling alone, because of my nurturing of spirituality has always taught me that God has always been with me, even when I physically have been trying to figure out who that person is going to help me physically being alone and me not knowing which way I'm going to turn, me knowing that, that God meets me on the water. That has always been the sustaining glue, again, that has just allowed me to go to the depths of plan A without worrying about being by myself.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I always say, a connection, with the divine invites us into a glimpse of the big picture of ourselves. Because that's what that's what spirituality is all about. If you're not connected with the one who has the aerial view, then you're going to basically, pigeonhole yourself in some ways, and begin to, have a narrow vision of yourself, right? And a narrow vision of your purpose. But if you are connected with the one who has the aerial view, now and then you get invited, to that aerial view to kind of get a sense of, hey, look at where you've been. Hey, look at where you are. And hey, look at where you can go, around it. And that's what meditation and spirituality, is all about. I mean, for me, as I continue to do, what I've been called to do. Let's transition a little bit and connect what's happening, right now around COVID, and then I want to get to, this whole, dilemma that we're dealing with, and pain and challenge around, the untimely, death of George Floyd in Minneapolis, and we can name all the others, Trayvon Martin, that has gone before us, and connected with this whole piece about purpose. So how can one stay on purpose, stay focused on one's purpose and one's call during, times of great tragedy and systemic pain, in terms of it, and how through all of this, can we leverage, strength and purpose and vision, when it just seems as if we're not getting anywhere, especially as black folk, in this country.
That's a really good question. Whenever we are placed in a scenario where uncertainty and the level of pain just seems palpable, I think the number one thing that I believe God is asking us to do is how can we elevate our faith? And then how can we elevate our faith and step up our purpose game, our individual selves, to meet the moment of destiny that is in front of us? And so what I always tell people when they're trying to figure out, how they can make sense of where they are in sense of the external things, the question then begs is, what are you willing to do right now, utilizing your vision that you've received for yourself? How can you amplify that to meet the call of the present moment? And for me in this particular point in time, like you were saying, Pastor Sauls, I jumped on IG and did a 4-week course on meditation to support people to be able to figure out how they can nurture themselves so that they can meditate and then be able to sleep at night and to be recharged and ready for the next day. And so and I had never done that before, but it just spontaneously came to me as I wrote down, again, going back and being clear with that vision. This is the vision. This is the call. The moment has come where people need to have a voice. They need to dig down within their purpose. What can I do in this particular point in time to meet the need? And that is when I said, you need to step up your virtual game and be able to support people with these meditations. And again, it was not anything that was a major, shift or major thing I had to do. I just had to meet the need with my voice.
Yeah. So clearly, clarity of one's purpose provides one with the ability to meet any moment, regardless of, the changes that we have to deal with and face in life. That's what I'm hearing you say. I think that's very, very important, so that what's consistent is this ongoing work on one's purpose, this ongoing pursuit, of one's vision, so that, when there is a disruption, COVID-19, or a disruption of just the ongoing, brutalization of black folk by law enforcement, one can then, discover clearly, how can I meet this moment from a place of power, which is my vision, right? From a place of vitality, which is my vision, in terms of that. I think that's a powerful piece, that you mentioned for us. Of course, for us, as black folk in the United States, striving for purpose and striving for vision has always been interrupted. since 1619. Of course, that disruption took place based on what happened through the Middle Passage, and all of that, and just this consistent institutionalized strategy of confusing identity, compromising ability, influencing activity, and therefore, thwarting destiny, for us in this country. When one see what has happened in, Minneapolis, it is a stark reminder of why it is so essential for us to meet this moment with a sense of purpose or a sense of power connected with purpose. And let me tell you why I say that. The words that, George Floyd uttered, and just that image, I contend, are the words, and that's the image of black people in the United States. We have had since 1619 this country and its white supremacist, strategies on our necks, right? And black folk have been uttering the words, "Take your knee off my neck." We've been uttering the words, "I cannot breathe," right? We've been uttering, the words of desperation. Even George Floyd, calling on his mama. Even George Floyd's nose bleeding. Because of health disparity, black folks' noses are bleeding, and COVID-19 has exposed just a health disparity, in the United States around that. So captured in that image with that bigoted white supremacist officer who has a track record, by the way, that's being revealed, really symbolizes what America, the United States, has done and continued to do, to Black America. Looking at that, one cannot help, certainly by trying to say, where do we go from here? We've tried to pass laws, we've tried to elect folk, but clearly this challenge of individual bigotry and institutional racism, has infected and affected police culture, in so many ways. How can, what's your sense of responding to this? And I need not mention what happened, in Central Park, right? With this guy that was just out there, and a white woman coming up to him. She's breaking the law, right? But she's going to call the police on him, holding her accountable on breaking the law. Your thoughts on all of this as we, seek to come to terms with this, but not just this, but to discern, next steps of moving us forward towards, really, rethinking, what it means to be Black in America.
Wow, a couple of things. That's such a loaded question. Michael Beckwith often says in a lot of his writings, and a lot of his speeches, is when you're in this space of just complete darkness, and for a lot of people, that is literally what it feels like, complete darkness. Asking the question of what is emerging within you in this particular point in time, and for me, what I'm hearing him say, and what I have taken from my own self, is what is emerging within me right now that I can amplify and be able to address by having a sense of agency and a sense of courage, again, expanding even bigger the purpose that I have had for myself. And The thing about purpose that a lot of people really just don't get is that purpose can be expanded along the journey. The things that I first started out doing with Plan A, I'm no longer doing. It's been morphing and moving towards, different corporations, different wellness aspirations, and different media aspirations. The great thing about that is by having a sense of purpose, you have a sense of intention. You have a sense of vision. And when you have a sense of intention and vision, you have a plan. And I think that is the number one thing that we as Black people have to be very clear about, is not just acting irrationally, but what is the plan that you have not only for yourself, but also your community. By community, that means you have a platform, whether that platform is, a block club, whether that platform is your household. How are you not only educating yourself, but also educating your community? What is the platform that you have, i.e. Twitter, Zoom, TikTok, Instagram, wherever it is? And is that in alignment with the larger purpose of how you want to see the world? If it's not, what is the plan then that you have to want to enact that? The other part of that is being clear and having planned conversations with your white counterparts, friends, associates, and partners, colleagues, wherever the case may be. And what I have done since a lot of this has happened I've been very clear with my white counterparts and asking them, what is it that you see about the scenario, and how do you plan to step in and make a difference? And you reposting a Facebook post, you sharing a LinkedIn post, that is the tip of the iceberg of what it is that we need you all to do to be responsible for this. And the number one thing, Kelvin, and this is just a life coach wellness perspective talking, I think white America, the reason that a lot of them are afraid of really enacting and spreading what is happening, they say they don't know what's happening. They can research climate change. If their dog has a piece of gum in their fur, whatever the case may be on YouTube, you can do the exact same research for this. But the question is, are white people courageous enough to look past their own sense of self and ego? Because what I believe, if they start sharing this information out into the larger public, it brings a case and a question of personal legitimacy. Has the equity that I have amassed for myself, is it legitimate? Has the life that I have received for myself, is it legitimate, or is it something that has been given to me on oppressive, systemic, racist systems that I just cannot handle or don't want to deal with?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I've posted yesterday, and I will continue to say that, there is a difference between white fragility and black vulnerability.
Absolutely.
One is a recent construct of convenience. That's white fragility, whereas black vulnerability, has been an institutional construct that has plagued us, in this country since 1619. And I think we need to just kind of come to terms, with that particular piece. It is no secret that because of the infection of an addiction to white supremacy, that a lot of white folk are in mass denial. And I'm listening to so many, individuals saying, oh, don't, and because of rugged individualism, now, whenever a white person does something, it's individualized, right? Whenever a black person does something, it is communalized, right? Then, just this double standard that continues to go on is part of, this whole virus called rugged individualism that we are dealing with around this. We have to be clear that police culture, which is what these officers represent, one with his knee on George Floyd's neck and the other standing by, right? And their inaction really is action, supportive action of what that police officer has done. We have to be clear about that. Police, that's a reflection of police culture that has been infected with white supremacy, connected to the institution of slave catching and affected by the system of race control that has been a visible and destructive virus that continues to choke black people into othering, invisibility, and marginalization. And so we have to be clear, America, that the enemy is within, and we have to work on dealing with the culture, this police culture that takes men and women through the academy and then bring them into a culture that they are assigned to, that's really infected with and affected by individual bigotry, and institutional racism. So we just have to be clear about that. That's what's going on. Yes, the firing is great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Today, the mayor of Minneapolis called for the indictment. Yes, that's great. Around that, let's see if that indictment will be taking place. Certainly, we dealing with a district attorney here in Los Angeles that has not indicted 99.9% of all the officers involved, in police, violence. Of course, when the person is found guilty, there will be accountability via sentence. But we are dealing with, a symptom of, what's happening. We got to get to the root cause of it around that, and so that's just so critical for us, to deal with as we move forward. As we come to a close, Klay, this all is connected. Individual purpose is connected to institutional purpose. It's also connected to country purpose. How can we as black people discover, develop, and deploy our purpose, right, within a country that in so many ways, because of the lie and the deception of exceptionalism, right, going through an identity crisis right now, right? How can we continue to be the conscience, of this nation, seeking to get it back on track so it can be and become what God has intended for it to be? And when I say God, I don't mean no white supremacist God, right? Mm-hmm. I'm talking about the God of liberation, the God of love, the God of equity, the God of justice, the God of equality, the God that seeks to manifest divinity within all of our humanity and all of creation in terms of that. How can we, as we work on our purpose, our vision, contribute to getting this yet to be United States of America back on track?
First thing I would say to people, and I've been saying this to clients all along, have your rest when you need to have your rest, and have a sense of ritual that you do that's for yourself one time a day. That is something that just for you, that brings you back to a sense of normalcy within yourself. And by normalcy, I'm not saying denial of what is happening, but something that gives you a sense of peace that you can go to every day, that is beneficial to you, that's productive for you, and that is very positive for you. Next, by all means necessary, you have to attack your purpose with a sense of courage. And so I love the whole mantra of there is only plan A. So what it does not say is that there aren't different winding paths to accomplish your plan A. What it says is your purpose has to be fulfilled. Only you can do what you were born to do. And if you take that mindset with you, that means that you have to usher in courage. And so by ushering in courage, does it mean that you have to knock down some doors? Does it mean that you have to call your white allies and advocate to the carpet for not telling the truth and for not offering the sense of equity or access, capital, relationship building, whatever it is that you have requested along the way? Whatever you need to do in order to do that, find a sense of courage and keep getting up to do that. 3 tips off the top of my head. 1, ask. Do not be afraid to ask for the support that you need, especially for people who are gateholders, who have a sense of incentive to support your purpose. My language, I always say, this is what I need. Is that something that you can support, especially to people who are white allies and advocates who have a lot of the checks that you need, a lot of the access and the relationships? If they can't support that, then, call them to the carpet. Second part I would always tell people is write down your vision, especially right now, because you need to be crystal clear not only on that vision and that mission statement, but what it actually looks like. Being able to just, say, oh, well, I want to do this, I want to do that, and it's not a clear cut and concise vision, you're going to always find yourself winding in different paths. And the third thing, ask. Again, do not be afraid to ask people for the support that you need in order to accomplish what you really want to do in life. There are resources. There are people out there who are available to support and help you. And if you find out there's definitely bigotry along the way, I've definitely done it within my corporate relationships as well as different writings that I've done. Call people out. Do not be afraid to do that because you're have a sense of retaliation and things like that. Again, to what Pastor Sauls was talking about, that level of spirituality and connection with God, you are protected. And that has been my saving grace throughout my time.
Absolutely. Get your purpose together, because if you don't have your purpose together, somebody is standing by to co-opt you into their purpose. Get your plan together. Right. If you don't have your plan together, guess what? There's somebody standing by to co-opt you into their plan. Get your vision together, because there's somebody somewhere that has a role for you to play in their vision. And so this is very, very critical for us. Certainly, America has given us as black people a script. The question is, are we going to follow that script or rewrite the script? Will you be Kunta Kinte or will you be Toby? And I'm glad that I've chosen in who I am and what I'm about to make sure that I am, Kunta Kinte, and making sure that I follow the script that God has given me as I do what I've been called to do. My brother from another mother, Klay S. Williams, New York. I'm looking forward to getting there and hanging out with you, man. And then you can, give me some lifestyle tips and all that good stuff. The book is There Is Only One Plan A. There's only one plan A, a journey towards self-discovery and renewed purpose. It is an awesome book. If you are looking to get your life, your plan, your vision, your purpose, to get all of that back on track as you navigate COVID-19 or as you navigate, just the contempt of black life, in the United States, I highly recommend, this book because, of the integrity that is in it, the advice that's in it, the guidelines that are in it. And I can guarantee you it will enable you to get back on track with your purpose, your vision, as well as, the plan that you have been given to impact the world. The world is waiting for you, so get busy. Klay S. Williams, thank you, my brother. Any final thoughts before we sign off?
No, just tell people this is just a time like no other. I know a lot of folks are fearful of what's uncertain, things like that, but this is literally the time where you can find your greatest purpose and be able to deliver that to the world like no other.
Absolutely. Thank you much, my brother. And we'll certainly be in touch and we'll connect again in the near future. But really appreciate, Klay and the work that he's doing. Was so glad, beloved, to be with you here on Faith Without Borders as we've, looked at the whole piece around purpose and put it within the context of COVID-19, as well as, within what's happening with, and I'm calling his name again, our brother George Floyd in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and just standing, in solidarity with those who continue to work, for the transformation of, police culture around this. This is a time of transition. Certainly, But we want for you to know that COVID-19 has been a big disruptor for many of us, but God is a bigger restorer, for all of us. I say this, I say these final words around, what's been happening, in Minneapolis, Minnesota, especially to all of my white brothers and sisters, or I should say my sisters and brothers, who happen to be white, because I do want to affirm your humanity. And I say this to you. Until white folks risk and leverage their privilege to do more in the dismantling of institutional and systemic racism, know this: I will question your sincerity and your commitment to its dismantlement. That is key. You cannot sit in the comfort of your privilege and wish, that, the depth and breadth that individual bigotry and institutional racism has infected and affected the United States of America. The time has come for you to realize that you got to take some risks now, and you got to leverage, the privilege that you have in terms of moving us towards the dismantlement, of institutional and systemic racism. This has been Faith Without Borders. I'm your host, Pastor Kelvin Sauls. We'll see you next time as we continue to stay safe, stay strong, be wise and well, stay prayerful and faithful, and hopeful, and of course vital, because victory is possible as we make our way through COVID-19.
I'm a young black man doing all that I can to stand. Oh, but when I look around and I see what's being done to my kind every day, I'm being hurt to this prey. My people don't want no trouble. We've had enough, Shango. I just wanna live. God protect me. I just wanna live. I just wanna live.
I was just a black boy brought up in the white world. I just wanna ask God if I'm in the right world. Is my life a test or is my life a curse? They put us in an ambulance, got us in a hearse, cause another brother deceased, but it doesn't matter. Killed by the police while we in the handcuffs. I don't wanna take a knee, I just wanna stand up. Where's the new Huey P? Call it Black Panthers. Just do the math, they subtract us like minus. Fuck COVID, KKK is the virus. We are not afraid, we will not stay quiet. They will always label a rebellion or riot. Kill a black man seems to be their assignment. White supremacists terrorize the environment. Guns and the canine, tasers and sirens. I just wanna live, I don't wanna live violent. We don't want violence.
My people don't want no trouble. We've had enough, Shango. I just wanna live. God protect me. I just wanna live. I just wanna live.